Teresa, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. John,
Here.
Ron,
Here.
Joycelyn,
Here.
Michelle. Michael.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And hopefully Michelle can join us in from her car, I believe, shortly. So the first matter is the agenda, which was with much appreciation prepared for us by staff. So we have a motion to approve our agenda.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and second that we approve our agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? I'm not staying. It's passed. This being the initial meeting of a very important committee, I want to thank again the staff for preparing the materials for us to go over. And our first discussion item is our job description. So, Michael, Joycelyn, comments on where we start or opinions, preferences?
Hey,
Hey, this is Michelle. I'm here now. I just want you guys to know I'm not gonna have, I don't have the best signal where I'm at, so I'll be in and out.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know that this says it was revised in 2013, but it has been updated since then to reflect, to mirror the other job descriptions within our system and also to reflect any current changes in law or policies. I think I don't have any provisions otherwise, but just to note that it has been updated since, it has been looked at since 2013.
Okay, John.
Well, yeah, I'd like to go over it a little bit more, but I'm fairly familiar with it, and I think it's pretty much up to date. I would appreciate comments from staff about whether it is up to date or whether there are some things that need reviewing.
Yeah, my comment on the job description is that I did pull it out and took a look at it. Gosh, I want to say January, February, right in that time period, when I sent the resignation letter, just to make sure that it was up to date. It felt like it was up to date. It certainly has language. Its language and format reflects a larger revision that we did to all of the job descriptions, as Joycelyn was mentioning, which Jennifer, when was that, 18? 19? Was even earlier than that? 17,
Yeah.
That ballpark, but it's in line. But it's in line with all of those. And so certainly one of the ways that we know that it was updated, at least in 2018, is that if you look at the very end of the paragraph that says manages and lists all the direct reports, at the very, very end it says capital improvement project manager, which is Jake's position, which was the last position. So that was reviewed. It was at least reviewed in 17, 18 when we brought Jake on. The other thing, which probably wouldn't have warranted a revision date because it was just a tweak, which is one reason that it is so old. The other thing is that when you see things like knowledge and support of principles of intellectual freedom, including the Library Bill of Rights and freedom to read statement, those are the types of things that we added for all of the library positions at one point, which did occur in that 17-18 time period. Also, when you see down in the essential physical inabilities with or without reasonable accommodation, that was essentially the output of some of our ADA audits. So the last time that the job description sort of went through the wash would have been sort of in that 17-18 time period. I should mention that all of our job descriptions are being reviewed right now anyway. So in terms of content, subject matter, all of that, I feel very confident that this is describing what it is that I do.
If I may add, I took a look at some of our other library job descriptions because for some reason there's a lot of openings right now. But I looked around and this is very comparable. Ours is a little more comprehensive than some. but it does reflect the library community of Savannah.
Good, good. Okay. Yeah, Steve, one thing I was wondering, considering the presentation of this with a bullet format, would it be possible, or would you feel comfortable in identifying some of the key factors that you think really would be the top priority for this job, or they're just all intertwined that you can't really separate them out?
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
We could separate them for bullets, but I'm thinking,
Right. I mean, and in terms of like, is bullet number 1 actually priority number 5? And that's,
yeah, something like, yeah.
yeah. And the truth of the matter is, yes, it is. I mean, it just depends on, what's happening at certain times of the calendar and cycle and what challenges are before us. So, yeah, I mean, ideally you need to have all of these expectations, and sometimes it's sometimes some of the things are at the top and sometimes they're at the bottom, just depending upon what's.
Well, and just a comment from John. I think when we get to the point when we take action on seeking a labor consultant to help us in this process, that we'll find out that one of the things that they will want to hear is any particular priorities that the board has that maybe don't show up in this description, and so I think that'll shape itself naturally in the course of hiring a consultant.
Yeah, I think so. And when I was going through, I noticed that we had some that are absolutely required by statute, like for attendance of board meetings and all that. And then we also have an equal bullet presentation, having a driver's license. And let's say a person has some physical challenges, can't have a driver's license. Well, it's still not going to come to the board meetings. So, but okay, yeah, but absolutely through, inevitably there will be a search organization involved so that we can, like you say, flesh it out then.
Yeah.
Ron, in answer to your question, I think there is one area where I think there is a definite priority, and I think that's under experience and training. I think we absolutely must have somebody with an MLS degree. It says Master's in Public Administration you strongly desire, but that doesn't replace the number 1. So I think that's the one area.
Sure. And also, going what Mr. Ashcroft publishes, there's some personnel standards and guidelines that I think are very helpful. Exactly. Like you mentioned, talk about the community demographics for hiring and all that. And that's, I think, something that certainly right now deserves some real focus.
If I could interject.
Please, no, just not interject you, please, just anytime, just.
Certainly one of the things that has happened over the 10, 12 years that I've been the director, and even going back to 4 years that Dick was the director, the position tends to be more like a conductor of an orchestra at this point. While there are things that I actually get involved in and do, there were times when Dick's predecessor used to do things like actually, catalog books, and used to actually go and buy books and bring them back here and things like that. And so a lot of that sort of fingers in the mud sort of work is not as much going on with the library director now. And in fact, to be honest, to be frank, I kind of miss some of that. I mean, I kind of miss the ability not to go and answer reference questions and things like that from time to time.
But you don't miss carrying bookshelves.
I do not
from one library
miss,
like it used to be.
No, I do not miss that. But I think the point is that you don't necessarily need super librarian. You need a librarian. You need somebody who understands the importance of balance of information, freedom of information, access, things like that. Because frankly, to the outside world, sometimes our standards don't make sense. I mean, you have to have somebody who does understand those standards. But it's not that you need somebody who can manage a large organization and can rely on professional staff, and can delegate to professional staff and not micromanage. That's certainly the change that's occurred over the last 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think you all have seen that.
Right. I think it was clear, in your own tenure, Steve, that in the beginning, it was a struggle for you to break away from some of those things. And you did extremely well at that. And that was noticed by the board as time went on. Well, if there's a sense that this is a workable job description, perhaps we ought to adopt it at this point as a job description.
Sure.
And so is a motion acceptable to that extent?
I think this is not necessarily, I think being the character of a meeting like this, not having the rigid requirements of, for example, like the sunshine law, but I think we can have, of course, I'm bouncing around, so too early in the morning, my brain's not working. We can have a motion which would be perfectly fine, or just a sense of the meeting, or however, I have no opinion whatsoever. So a motion, of course, would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
prefer a motion.
Well, that's okay. Well, I would move that we adopt the job description as submitted to us and as on file in the district as the guiding description for the job as we're starting the search for a new director.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and second that we adopt the current job description for the Chief Executive Officer of Mid-Continent Public Library to be used in the search committee. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Good, passed.
And I have to give Michelle a chance to.
Yeah, Michelle.
So yeah, Michelle,
She may be out of it.
She's in a no-cell zone.
Yeah.
She's driving. That happens.
Yeah.
okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I vote yes, sorry.
Thank you.
My phone wouldn't unlock.
So candidate search, we have two members here who have been through that before, so please, you lead the discussion.
Joycelyn, go ahead.
Well, the first candidate search was anticipated, and we had a well-qualified candidate at the time, and that candidate was selected. The second transition, which involved Mr. Potter, again, it was anticipated, and we had a well-qualified candidate in mind. The issue, I think, for the board at the time was not whether or not Mr. Potter was well-qualified, because he was. We were focused on the needs of the library that had changed. And we felt we owed the taxpayer and the library district to look fully, just to make sure that who we had was the best person, and that was definitely the case. We're kind of at a point right now in the library search this time where we don't have a current front runner for a follow-up as at this time. And so the question before us is, what type of search are we going to do? Are we going to handle it ourselves, or are we going to hire a national search firm? I think that what's unique about this time period is that there are a lot of openings. And I think if we're going to get a candidate qualified to run one of the largest library systems in the country, my opinion is that we need to look nationally.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And even there probably are people on our staff now who are qualified for this position and may well apply and are encouraged to apply. But I think it would serve them well as all of our tax-paying patrons if we were to search on a national basis. And if it turns out that we hire someone from the staff, why then that someone can feel that they have competed against the best in the country and won out. And so I think that's important that we do that and have a search of that kind. And the people who conduct such searches, I've had some experience with that, and they are good at bringing you out, getting you to articulate what's important, and helping you with appropriate questions to ask that are related strictly to the description of the job and what is expected of you and how you would handle certain situations if you face them. And that's important that we have that guidance, because even though we had this experience many years ago, it's sort of faded in the background now. And I think we could benefit by that. And I hope that the staff can help us with that situation and can help us to find an appropriate consultant. And I believe we have I don't know where that stands. Is there any search already been done for such a consultant, or?
I have a list.
Yeah, and I have a list that I've shared with Joycelyn.
I shared it with you, Ron.
Just companies that I know of and that have done some work.
Yes, same thing.
Yeah, actually, Bradbury Miller is probably the firm that Mid-Continent has actually worked with in the past. Bradbury Miller is Dan Bradbury and Jo Beth Bradbury, who are previously library directors in this market.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
And so they
And Bradbury was the director of Kansas City Public Library for quite a while.
And Jo Beth was North Kansas City. And they both
Forgotten that.
They're both semi-retired, but the organization is still working. And we actually use them to help try to fill our youth services manager back in, 2008, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have some experience with them, and I've shared some of that information. But to John's point, I really do want to underscore this, that I think going through the process myself back in 2010 helped to legitimize and justify my hire. And I think that would also be true of any staff member, any current staff member who went through that. I mean, that they would have, as John said, would have earned the position. It helps legitimize them in the eyes of the staff, and helps to support them. And certainly that will be the message that I would pass on to any internal candidates. It's not a lack of confidence. It's actually an opportunity to help you prove yourself and to gain full legitimacy when you take on the helm. So
Absolutely.
Just to state agreement with what was said, I couldn't imagine any search for a new CEO other than going through casting a broad net, and that requires, of course, the skills of the search firm. And also, too, just as a very practical matter, John and I were visiting before, and an entirely innocent comment that was unfortunately made was construed as something which was to one of the recipients of the comment was viewed as being quite offensive or potentially offensive, and all that did was cause a great deal of unfortunate results for the organization. And I think that kind of guidance is absolutely essential, and it's going to be the outside help. And also just to again express my strong feeling that I think we have absolutely fantastic talent in this organization. So if they would certainly make them express any willingness they may have for this position, Steve mentioned, it just confirms that they should it be the result that they would be the best one considering their competition.
Ron, if I can,
Please.
yeah, another thing about supporting the idea of the search firm. It's one of the reasons why I brought Jennifer to talk today is that, while you may not be able to always see her screen, I mean, she's working on a number of different things. And the point, and as Joyce pointed out, there's lots of job openings right now in our library system. So Jennifer and her team are working on getting personnel budget together, hiring all the people that we're trying to hire as a result of the Great Resignation and the challenges associated with putting everything together. And so I just want to be really clear about this. If there is a feeling at all that this is something we can handle internally, we cannot. That staff does not have the capacity to handle the executive hire process. And if you need Jennifer to talk to you a little bit about how she's filling her days.
I think that what I would say is that we can assist with administratively. So, we have a compliant applicant tracking system that we use. So we can use that and provide, links so that the applicants can submit, a resume in addition to a, compliant application, which has all of the legal notices. Now the search firm may have, may want to do something different, but that is available and something that we can, definitely support because Mid-Continent is so big and it's been around for so long. We would want to make sure that I am in contact with the search firm as they're looking at candidates, because we want to make sure that if they have any history with Mid-Continent, that that they have all of the information. So, if there's any background, performance evaluations, anything that we have internally about a candidate, we would want to make sure that the committee was fully informed. And so we could work with the search firm on that. Absolutely. So it's just, a search of this.
The benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So any communication about the benefits, policies that are, handbook policies, employment policies that are internal, those sorts of things. Absolutely. We have a person that's just dedicated to doing benefits. So, we can definitely do that. This is a big deal. And, what Steve is not saying, but I will say is that, Steve's career path to this position really doesn't exist anymore, which makes Steve a bit of a unicorn. So previously, there was this business manager position that encompassed, IT, what we call IT now, HR, finance and facilities, and
finance and
facility. So it gave, Steve and others who came up, previously, that dip into all of those parts of the business in a really like baptism by fire sort of way. And that position doesn't exist anymore because it's really not a good idea to have all of that, responsibility under one person. So, that's why previously, like you said, there are people that work for us that are talented and could likely, do this job. But, previously we've had a pretty clear, successor because they've had the experience with this library doing all of those things, leading up to this point. And I think that's been kind of the history of the library for always, the way that has kind of worked out. So this is just, we're in a different and unique situation for the library. And, but, my team is here to answer questions. I think a search firm would be an excellent idea to provide help about compliance, because even, the last time this board looked for a director and did this process, that's years and years worth of employment law changes and things that are important to know, questions you can and can't ask, all of those things that will be, critical for, this committee and the board to have guidance on. So, but wherever we can particularly work with that firm to provide any background information, admin assistance, all of those things we're available.
Okay, just a comment on the process of doing that. I'm kind of presuming that we would ask the staff to do the administrative work of getting the word out, however that might be done, that we're seeking a consultant for this service. We wouldn't want to just concentrate on one firm. We'd want to get it open so that we could have, hopefully we would have 2 at least, and perhaps 3, as many as 3 or 4 people who would be interested in the job and would want to compete for it.
Sure.
And then we would hope that staff would get us to that position, and then it would be responsibility of this committee to interview those persons and make sure that we know what they have to offer and what's the personality relationship that might be helpful between the group and the consultant. So I would assume that that's how we would proceed at this point. And I don't know that needs a motion, but as long as we're, as long as there's no one that finds that objectionable in any way, why we should proceed that way.
Absolutely. I think that's.
Just directing us to go.
Yeah.
Do the search.
Yeah, so what there's a couple different ways we can do it. I mean, depending upon how formally you want to do it, we can do RFPs, RFQs, or I can just call the people that are on the list and just say, they're ready to go. We want something back, whenever we set the next meeting, we want something back by the next meeting.
Sure. I think that's just a common sense approach. That's great.
Okay.
Somebody online, Neva?
Yeah, I just said I would agree with that. It's Michael.
My observation, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's probably only about a handful of firms with experience recruiting for libraries.
Yeah.
And I think that Mid-Continent is well known enough nationally that any of those firms would know about us. I think personally, and I would recommend to the committee that in order to expedite our process, I think choosing a firm that has experience with libraries, that has experience with Mid-Continent would be of benefit. Because I think any firm that is doing recruiting for libraries would have a national focus.
Yeah,
But one that knows us would be helpful.
That makes sense. And I think if we do it the way that has been proposed, sort of informally rather than a formal request for proposal, that would make sure that happens, that we would be dealing only with people who are very familiar with libraries. If you were looking for a city manager, there'd be lots of consultants out there that we want to talk to, but we're not looking for a city manager necessarily. So.
I think Steve mentioned that he had a couple of names already that were recommended. So
yeah,
that's great. Sure.
Okay. Well,
So our follow-up will be, well, 2 of these firms have already reached out to me. I mean, Karen Miller's already called me and said,
Perfect.
When the dust settles, call, because we have stuff to talk about. And so
I'm sure there'll be more.
and there may be a couple more, but to the point, there's not a lot. I mean, there's not like 700 firms that do this. There's more like 5. And so we can reach out to them, and our direction will be that the ad hoc committee is interested in hearing a proposal and a plan by X date, whenever the next meeting date will be. Okay.
And Steve, you said one of the firms is local.
Well, Bradbury Miller traditionally has had a headquarters in Kansas City. Joe Beth and Dan are semi-retired. And so I think they've actually moved all their headquarters to Ohio now.
Oh,
But Joe Beth and Dan still live here in the metro.
okay. Sure.
I just want to make one quick point. It's important to remember that search firms are a candidate's first introduction to Mid-Continent. So it would be important for me and for us to have a good introduction in order to attract the best candidate. So I think the selection of the search firm, someone who knows us, would be of value.
Yeah, the reason I asked if the firm was local would be, of course, they'll be submitting information on their firm and their success rate and everything. But I think if we could actually meet with them face to face, that would be, I think, a great help. But if they have to come in from Ohio or whatever, might throw cold water on that approach.
I wouldn't be opposed to like a Zoom.
Yeah, as a national, I mean,
Sure.
well, the conversation Ron and Joyce and I had at one point now, and I'm really not trying to pat myself on the back, but to be completely honest, when you look at the job description and you look at my peers, the peers that I know that are out there, there's about 100 people that are truly qualified for this job. And maybe half of those that are probably willing to entertain changing jobs and moving to Missouri and all of that sort of stuff. It's not a huge universe. To that point, it's also not a huge universe of search firms because, like John, I mean, how many city managers are there in the United States? 20,000, 30,000?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's just not, I mean, and they change like people change socks sometimes.
Oh,
Library
now, come
directors.
on.
Library director, well, it depends on the city, depends on the board, it depends on the mayor and all of that.
Yeah.
But there's just not as much churn in the library. So there's just not as many search firms in the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will work on that and then staff will bring that back to the next meeting when the next meeting is decided. So.
I think as you get responses, if you could just shoot emails to us or something so we kind of know what kind of feedback you're getting. And
I can do that.
I'm wondering if maybe the timing is somewhat dependent on the kind of feedback that you have from these firms.
Yeah, well, I think if we can, we ought to pick a date now that we expect to, because we need to get moving along in this.
Yeah, Steve mentioned too that he's had contacts from them already, so that I'm sure they're ready to jump.
Yeah, so before we leave, well, I think we, as a first objective, need to have a,
On the calendar.
yeah, we need to get on the calendar.
Absolutely.
Right?
Is May 1st too soon or too late? May 1st too soon or too late? Or a response? I'm just throwing out a date.
May 1st.
It's a Sunday.
Okay.
Difference, but
It's a Sunday.
yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't make any difference. to us, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we'll just-
May 2nd. Well, if they get it to us by the 1st, we can
You
always.
say it first.
they're gonna
It's
be-
universal day. They'll have it.
Everything's 24/7 with
Yeah,
the
once
internet.
you're Monday morning, it'll be in.
All right, Steve, do you have any idea at what time you might be able to get some kind of response from these search firms?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because we haven't worked that closely with them, but I think that, if what we're talking about is introduction to the firm, what's included, what their price is, what their timeline would be and process, and things like that. I mean, I would assume that you could almost go to their website and get all of that except for the price
Yeah, and
right now. I mean, so it'd be a pretty quick.
I'm kind of thinking, to set up a Zoom meeting, considering that I'm sure their percentage is going to be, they'd be very eager to get on the computer this afternoon. So,
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's going to be I mean, if we're not doing something like a posting and a response to an RFQ, RFP or something like that, if we're just calling people and saying, hey, we're trying to get 3 bids or 5
Right.
bids or 5 bids or whatever, and we want to know your process and your pricing and all of that, we could probably turn that around pretty quickly.
Is there any reason why we couldn't do that for Tuesday, the 26th
That's true.
of April?
26, I think, yeah, perfect.
26th of April?
Gives them half a month, yeah.
You know, what might be helpful is just that, if we had if the board kind of had a chart saying, here are the firms, here is how we rate their expertise, and then we can choose 2, and maybe the board president can chat with them.
I think the committee should chat with them.
Okay, the committee can chat with,
In fact,
or if there's a clear front runner, then we can chat with the front runner. But I think
Yeah.
you guys know about this, the search firms. It would be helpful to have feedback as to their qualifications.
it'd be essential that I think this group at least should be.
That will actually be, I hadn't mentioned that, but that probably will be that. My first step will be to post on the ULC directors listserv and say, I've been instructed to help engage. Tell me your experiences.
Right.
Who have you used, either personally, who have you been placed by, or who have you used? What's your experience? Who do you like? Who do you dislike? Why?
That would be essential.
And I will have that essentially as, I can share those emails.
So the 26th is a reasonable time?
I believe so.
Absolutely.
Michael, and
Yeah, Ron, I'll be out of town on the 26th and will not be have any internet accessibility.
Michael, I'm sorry, when would you be returning?
We'll be coming back until the 29th.
you're leaving when, Michael?
26th, early in the morning.
Oh, the 26th, okay.
Yeah.
Would the 25th put a squeeze on you for packing and everything?
Nope.
25th?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be out of town, but I can provide everything for everybody before then, so.
But did Michael say he couldn't be here if we did it on the 26th?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But
Yeah.
Steve will be on the 25th.
Okay, well,
And I'll be in town that week, but I'll be out of town the week before and the week after.
25th is the day. Yeah.
25th?
Mhm.
Okay,
Any particular time?
that's fine.
Not at 9.
Not at night.
No, not at 9. I can't do it at 9 even.
Oh, I know.
I can just poll you all right now. Do you, 1 o'clock?
No, mornings are fine.
Okay.
Okay,
10?
Jennifer, what's better for you? Are mornings better?
Yeah, we're here a lot. Mornings are great.
Mornings are better. Okay, well,
10? 10?
Fine, you said 9.
10?
10.
10.
10 is better.
10.
10 is better?
10 for all? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So that's April 25 at 10 a.m. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So any more on the succession plan? I'm sorry, the candidate search? So let's jump on down to the succession plan. The structure, of course, is laid out in the policy. And then the structure has to be fleshed in, so that's our discussion. And
So, yeah, we're sort of into that right now, aren't we? I mean, aren't we taking the steps that the succession plan anticipates at the moment? You know, the way it's, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't need to.
No, that's fine. I was gonna rattle on, so.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. We are in the middle of it. My concern, given the job market right now, we may not meet that June 30th deadline. And if so, that kicks in the emergency succession plan where the person who is interim cannot be a candidate for the position. So I think we need to think ahead as to how would we handle that if we do not meet the June 30th deadline.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following that. Right now, the succession plan would say that the deputy
Right.
director would become.
But I think that is only places at 60 days.
I'm looking at it.
Okay, I think there are two methods of succession.
Right.
One is the planned succession, which I believe we're in, and there's another method of succession called the emergency succession. Emergency as part of the title, not an adjective.
Right.
If it's part of the title, again, there's the person's not eligible
Mhm.
for succession. However, the big deal is this, that's in a policy. The board can change the policy at a simple meeting.
Well, it would have to be a vote. That's what
Of
I'm
course,
asking.
yeah.
Do we want to do that? Because the interim plan is a 60-day plan and we're into the 60 days now. Do we the question I guess I'm bringing up is, do we anticipate being able to fill or find the final candidate in that 60 days, or should we consider whether or not we change the policy to adjust that? I'm just thinking ahead. Maybe it's the pessimistic part of me thinking that maybe we cannot fill this position in 60 days.
I don't think we can fill it in
I
60
agree.
days. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I don't think we can either.
Yeah, yeah.
So that necessitates us rethinking our policy on that.
Yeah, if I can interject, I mean, certainly one of the things that I remember about the process is that, you know, your past precedents informs the process that you put together. And the past precedents has always been that there was, in terms of a planned succession, there was always, you know, somebody who was there and all of that. So, so that's why it was written as tightly as it was. And so when you go to emergency succession, just quoting it, it says emergency succession is activated following an unplanned or unexpected departure of the library director and CEO. This departure may be due to death, immediate resignation, immediate termination, or any separation where less than 60 days notice was given by the library director and CEO or the library board. And then it goes into more details. And then eventually does get to that point where Joycelyn's talking about the interim director being appointed after 60 days. And so there's so yeah, I mean, to Ron's point, I mean, you can argue that this is a planned succession. I've given you more than 60 days. And when you read the section on planned succession, it doesn't talk about any of this at all. On the other hand, you can argue that you can argue that clearly there was some thought by the board about this thing stretching on forever. And if it were to stretch on forever, how would you manage this so that there's not a caretaker manager or whatever the circumstance? My recommendation would be, as long as you're still in the ballpark, you know, 60 days, even 90 days, you know, another month. I mean, getting you toward fall. I think that you could use the traditional succession where the assistant director, as the assistant director's job description, says the assistant director does fill in for the library director. And so as things set right now, I go home on June 30th, July 1, Susan is in charge. I mean, that's the way the job descriptions are set up.
Yeah.
And in terms of the things that we've talked about before, things like staff. I mean, if Joycelyn, if you needed a copy of job descriptions for personnel committee, you would contact Susan. Susan would contact Jennifer, just like you would today contact me, and I would contact Jennifer. So all of that's fine. What I would ask, though, is that if we get at the end of August and it still looks like it's not going to be a done deal or a bona fide offer hasn't been made, then I think you owe it to staff, not just Susan, but to all staff, to try to figure out something that's a bridge, to name an interim. So even if it is Susan who is acting as interim director, she's going to deserve a little bit more compensation for being the caretaker.
Oh, absolutely.
I think she could do it for 60 days. Beyond that, you owe it to whoever is taking on the extra headaches a little bit better compensation. Whether it's Susan, whether it's Richie. I mean, Richie is somebody who might be someone you might consider. Whether it's one of my MPAs, and we do have 2 MPAs on staff that would not be qualified permanently, but can certainly manage a large organization. So the idea would be, if we got to the end of August, it didn't look like there was, an immediate end in sight, then name an interim with a temporary job description with appropriate compensation, and then carry on. That would be my recommendation. Did that muddy the waters too much?
No, that's the exact conversation I wanted to have.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that we will be able to make a decision by August. What you think?
Along with you.
Yeah, okay.
I hope.
Yeah.
John, I would say by September. I think you may be able to make a bona fide offer sometime in September to somebody and that they may be able to accept it. But this gives you a little bit of wiggle room there. And what you don't want is the history in this area. Kansas City Public, in fact, the reason Quan works for us is because the library director at Kansas City Public, that position was a revolving door. Quan worked for 5 different directors in 5 years. And he just couldn't, it was just redoing the chart of accounts every time a new director came in. He just couldn't take it. You don't want that. You also don't want a situation like Johnson County, which was open for almost 2 years without a clear interim in place. I mean, there was nobody running the show.
Right.
So you have to, I think, a commitment, try to get August, September, understanding that if you do get August 31st and you still haven't made a bona fide offer, then you probably need to figure out a short-term interim using the succession plan as a guide.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my recommendation.
It's a very prudent approach, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to have kind of a conversation now before we're into it.
Michael and Michelle, are you on board with that?
Yes, Michael here.
I am.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And I think we're especially fortunate because if it does get to the case where we have an interim CEO, which of course would be 2 cases eligible to be the next CEO, 2 MLAs and 2 MPAs, I think we're absolutely blessed to have a talent here. Any more on the succession plan?
Just one other thing which has been on my mind, and it relates to the fact that we've had so little experience with this and so much time has lapsed since we did have experience. And as was pointed out to us by Jennifer earlier, a lot has changed in the world of hiring people since 2013 or so. So we ought to have, and I don't know what this costs or how we would approach this exactly, but we should have a labor attorney. I think you would call it a labor attorney.
Yeah.
Someone who is experienced in the law of all of this beyond the human resources part of it, but actual legal experience with it to advise us.
Yeah, that's in the writing, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there were some names that were identified absolutely, yeah. And I think too, in the human resources area, in the labor law area, there's so many things everything from obviously the federal, state law, even down to the personalities and the credentials of the person coming. There's such a morass of rules that are applicable that, and like what you shared with me, I mentioned, you just see the most innocent little comment could explode and it's like a minefield that you absolutely have to have.
The story I always like to give is in my interviews, which John and Joycelyn may not remember this, but when I was interviewed, I was actually asked how old I was.
I remember that.
In the interview.
I'm out there.
Now,
you got the job. You got the job.
Well, yeah, and now the problem with that is that, of course, if I wasn't offered the job, now it's muddied the waters as to was I hired because I was too young? Was I hired because I was too old? And it just muddies the waters and causes a problem.
Absolutely. That's a good example.
So if I can, Jennifer, would you talk a little bit about Megan Patterson?
Sure. Megan is currently who we are engaged with as our employment law attorney.
By we, staff. Staff uses her.
Yeah, that's who we use. And our experience with Megan has been for several years through a complaint that she and her firm worked with us on. It's Megan is the firm is Waldeck and Patterson, and she's a partner. I just worked with Megan Friday and yesterday. She is professional, knowledgeable. It's not just her; she has associate, and would be willing to review anything. I mean, I would say probably a contract at some point if there's going to be.
Probably some sort of engagement or something.
Engagement or
But
contract that, I mean, those types of things that she could also do. And
what is her rate that she uses for staff?
200 for herself, 150 for, hold on.
Do we have a general arrangement or a contract with her now to provide those services?
Yes.
Well, she could just continue to work under that contract if we're
Correct.
satisfied that that would be the right person.
And if she was satisfied that
Yeah.
that was fair for her. as well.
Right, yes, of course.
But yeah, a la carte in terms of that is her rate is 200 an hour. So her associate rate is 150.
Which used to sound like a lot of money to
Not
me,
anymore.
but
For a lawyer, no.
No, not anymore. No.
I just have two quick comments. One, no matter how much it costs us, it won't cost us more than a mistake.
Correct.
one mistake.
Yeah, and two, I prefer having, I don't like having competing attorneys. If we have our normal HR attorney and another one advising selection committee, I would hate for that to clash. So my preference would be to have that under one umbrella, but I'm open to other arguments.
I didn't follow that. We're suggesting that Phil
No,
does.
no, I'm saying if we were to get a separate attorney than the one we already use for HR, another, two employment attorneys seem superfluous and
Oh,
possible.
no, we don't engage one at a time.
Right,
And I don't believe that the search firm will have their own legal counsel.
no, they won't.
No, I have never seen that before.
No, I think they get in hot water if they can, because that would be practicing law, which is,
Yeah,
Mhm, yes.
Right.
okay. Yeah, I'd like
Can
to
I
keep
say
it so,
something for a minute?
please.
I guess at the end of the day, I just want an attorney that the board can actually talk to with this, that we don't have to jump through hoops, go through this, that, and the other. If we've got questions that is accessible, that we can deal with. That's a big one for me.
And I would say to that, Michelle, that Megan's response and comprehensive response time has been impeccable. So, I sent a complex question Thursday afternoon and had a complex answer yesterday morning. So, yeah, Megan is definitely responsible. We are already engaged with that firm, and so I think that.
I guess my point is if this committee needs to speak with the attorney, I don't want to have to call somebody to get permission to talk to an attorney. If we need to, I think that's my point. That's my main point.
Megan is engaged with the library, so and so whatever contact path you guys want to have with her, I think would be whatever appropriate.
Yeah, I think
we would want to let her know so she would understand who was authorized to, to speak to her on behalf of the library.
right.
But yeah, I don't know.
No, to Michelle's point, I think that's right. And she would be really responsible to this group. That's the succession committee. That was the intention of it all.
I'm not familiar with the lawyer you mentioned, but I'm familiar with the number of labor lawyers. And one thing I do know is the first thing I look at when I want to find somebody in a particular area is I go to their how they present themselves to the public. And I look at hers. She had a category of different areas which suggested priority, and labor law was not, if I recall, even in the top 2 or 3 or 4. So again, it's majority vote, but I kind of like to keep that inquiry tabled for at least till we can be in touch through email. 5 or 6 or 7 of us or whatever, but again, it's majority call.
Well, I also think it's important to recognize that whatever legal firm is employed by the library, they represent the library first, not individual board members.
Of course, absolutely. We're only here by virtue of our appointed capacity, not
Absolutely.
individually. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I really, Ron, with all due respect, I think that it would be better if we could decide today that we're just going to use this person.
Oh, we get the majority vote. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would propose that, and if it takes a motion, I would so move that we hire the person whose name I don't remember.
Megan Patterson from Paul Patterson.
Okay, as our attorney for this search. And that's
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
I guess moved and second that we engage the law firm of
Waldeck and Patterson.
Waldeck Patterson
You say that again.
to provide
Waldeck
legal.
and Patterson, so WALDECK. And Patterson, so PATTERSON.
Sorry.
It's been moved and second that we engage the law firm of Waldeck Patterson to be legal counsel in the area of labor law for the committee. So all in favor, please signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? It's
I'm
passed.
gonna abstain.
Yeah, I abstained. So it is passed.
In terms of,
Sorry.
so
Point of
so
clarification.
everyone's in favor, Michelle abstained.
I abstained.
Okay, Ron, that's okay. Thank you.
And so in terms of process, staff has an engagement with her. We could, I have contact.
Sure.
I told her that someone may be in touch. about
Yeah,
it.
is the engagement is your engagement letter on a project by project basis or open-ended or something like that?
It's open-ended. It's, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's a la carte. So it's like when something comes up.
You call them and engage for that issue.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
So we ask a question or for an assessment or an opinion on a particular issue. And
Kind of like with us with Phil.
correct. And I would say that in the case of the way Megan responds, it will be with citing, legal precedent and pointing to how it applies and making sure that we have a full understanding of what the
Yeah,
because
that's
ultimately everything is our decision.
the nature
So,
of
yeah.
opinion, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she should do that.
So, but in terms of engaging, I mean, we can do this, a couple different ways. I mean, one way that we could do it, of course, is just contact her and say, can this ad hoc selection committee be added to our current engagement?
Sure.
Number one.
Yeah.
And your current contacts will be any of these people.
Yeah.
Or you want to do a separate engagement. And if she's wanting to, I mean, in either way, she may want to talk to someone other than staff.
Right.
So,
But if we could do it that informally that way, just to concentrate that her responsibilities to the committee, that would work. I think that would be the way to do it if we could do it.
do you want me to reach out?
Oh,
to
sure.
her?
Yeah, please, absolutely. Yeah. I think too, I think we'll eventually get down to the point where it'd be helpful to have her present at least by Zoom. And so much communication, of course, is nonverbal, and I think the presence here could be essential.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
Sometimes.
that real-time consult would be helpful.
What's that?
Having email to consult in time, real time. Or to have intervening in real time would be very helpful.
Oh, it'd be essential. I think, again, to have her here, I think would be great. But, and I think too, with regard to the billable hours, first of all, those are very, 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 very generous. But considering the gravity of what's being done, I'm not saying that money is not an issue, but it's certainly not a very big issue,
no, that's,
in my opinion.
yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, any more on succession plan? So let's go to other business. Michael and Michelle,
Yes.
And any other comments you care to share?
Well, in regards to the attorney, I think it would be helpful to have someone present in our meetings. So we have questions, we can get those answered and there can be input from that person. And so I would be in favor of having whoever it is present at our meetings. So that'd be really good.
I agree with that.
I've got the notes and I will talk with her.
And if you wouldn't mind asking her to, we have a date tentatively, well,
Oh, yeah.
set. If she could just kind of join us through a TV screen.
Right. I've got the notes.
Wonderful. Okay, just a comment, not a suggestion of anything. What seems to be the opinion of everybody with regard to openness of these meetings? Again, I absolutely believe in the whole notion of no secrets, no, it's a buzzword, I know, but it's got meaning, transparency. On the other hand, we're also dealing with things of a very sensitive nature about the applicants or whatever. So I see we're really being polarized, and whatever your thoughts would be, I really appreciate it.
Well, my understanding is that this is an official committee of the board, authorized by the board through policy, and we have to follow the sunshine law, which I certainly don't object to. I do think that there's a sensitivity when we get to the point where we have candidates. I think we have to think that through and have some advice on that before, because I'm a little behind times on that. I know that, I mean, we could get to a point where we would have, let's say, just hypothetically, that we had 3 finalists down from 20 that we thought were, any one of the 3 might actually be good. We could choose to have a public session in which taxpayers, citizens could come in, have a slightly social occasion where, you'd have some coffee and donuts or something, and people would come in and meet the candidates, and the candidates would make a short presentation, and there might be some time for questions, limited with the same limits that we use in our board meetings, and so on. I'm not predicting that that's where we'll be, but I just hope that we would have that in mind as a possibility going forward. That's the only situation, I think, where we have to be fairly guarded. I think we have to be aware that some of these people that might end up on the top 3 or 4 or whatever it is might have wonderful jobs right now. In fact, I wouldn't even be hurt if we got into that situation where, there were people that were wonderfully successful at their jobs now, wanted to come here. I think that would be a great situation to be in. And if that happens, though, I think, we have to figure out in advance what is our position going to be, because the press will be interested in that and will want to know as much about that as they possibly can. And I don't blame them for wanting that, but we have an obligation to the people who apply to us to be somewhat, to be careful. Let's put it that way. And I don't know what careful means at this point, because I don't know enough about how the law currently is or not. But in any event, that's just a comment that we need to be very cautious about to protect our applicants as much as possible.
Yeah, my thought was something along these lines. We have meetings and we have, let's say, 3 resumes that we water things down to. And then we have these resumes out here and we discuss the person in particular. And now, I think clearly a potential applicant can be, we have a closed meeting for that. But we don't have to have a closed meeting. So my thought would be if we start comparing people, and my fear is that we treat them more like commodities instead of potential CEOs. And we can close the meetings and nobody is affected. Or we keep the meeting open and we go through this whole idea of approaching somebody as something that we tick off little qualifications on a qualification sheet. To me, I think that's kind of not demeaning, but kind of cold. It is not required to be a closed session when we have that, but I guess at the time we might want to think about, do we want to just for the dignity and the respect for the person, if we can, should we keep that closed or open it up for the public? And
Absolutely, I think we should. Sorry, it's Michelle. I mean, but I agree with you, Ron. I think until we get to those final stages, I think we need to keep them closed. I don't think that
I couldn't hear that comment.
I couldn't hear you, Michelle.
As long as we're within the parameters.
Michelle, I'm sorry. I think you're breaking up a little bit, or at least. Could you repeat what you said? Okay, thank you.
I think from a matter of transparency, this is Joycelyn. I think we can't close the process.
Mhm.
Kind of like with personnel, you can't close the process, but when you discuss individuals, you can close.
Well, that's
It doesn't have to be an
Yeah,
either.
part of the process is in fact to discuss the person, to evaluate them. The process is at the core of the process is to evaluate somebody to replace Steve. So-
Right, and I think that unless we can make them anonymous, that part of the process should be closed. I don't think the whole meeting should be closed.
Oh, but you can't,
Yeah,
you can't.
So I just wanted to make that.
Right, yeah, I think everybody's basically saying, if I understand what Michelle's saying, that's what she was saying also, I thought, is that, yeah.
So two things to interject if I can. The first is that, I think it sounds to me like everyone's on the same page. And I think that if we were to take a quick poll, I'm projecting, but my interpretation is nobody would feel this meeting should have been a closed meeting.
Right.
And this meeting was all about process.
Yeah.
And so that should sort of be the guide. If you're talking about how you're going to do something, that should be open. If you're talking about who you're going to do it to,
Right.
then maybe that should be closed. And so this is actually the exception that's in the Sunshine Law. It says hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of a particular employee by governmental bodies when personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. Now this is a little bit of a caveat because you're not talking about an employee, you're talking about a candidate.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of muddiness. However, any vote on a final decision when taken by a public governmental body to hire, fire, promotion, or discipline of an employee of a public governmental body shall be made available by record and how each member voted to the public within 72 hours of the closed meeting. So, and then it goes on to some more information. But so what I think that is saying is yes, you can have 5 resumes out in front. You can say this person's great at this and this person's great at this, all in closed session. And you can vote to say, we are going to recommend moving forward with this person. And in 72 hours, Teresa will make that vote public because that's what the statute says to say. But you can do all of that deliberation in a closed session. The decision as to whether or not you're going to use rock, paper, scissors, that process, that process would need to be an open session.
And maybe,
Especially our criteria for choosing absolutely needs to be in public.
I think so. I would argue that would be something that you might be able to get away with it being in closed session, but honestly, it's better to talk about your criteria in open session.
I think it has to be. But I guess maybe reflecting on when I brought this up, we can resolve this by once we have the resumes, instead of saying John Smith or Jane Smith at Indianapolis Public Library, delete the name.
Candidate A, B, C. Yeah.
You could.
Exactly. And the demographics and the budget and so forth with that library without identifying it, and we've got it covered. My feeling is if we have 850,000 people that contribute to this, many of whom are actually our users. And I think we have an absolute stainless steel hard obligation to let them know what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So my feeling is information just has to get out.
Well,
Especially for something that's important.
well, and even as I was mentioning, even if you went into closed session to talk about people by names where they can be easily identified, within 72 hours,
Oh, yeah.
it does have to be posted anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a good discussion. I think it's well to have that discussion because we'll face that down the road, but
Yeah. So any other comments? Michael, Michelle?
Michael here. I think Michelle posted a comment. I don't know if everybody saw it.
Yeah.
But personally, I know that, with the Sunshine Law, and I agree with what we've all said, but I think the evaluation should be, as Michelle stated, closed while we're evaluating those candidates and then open later on. So that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's correct, Michael, and I thought that's what Michelle had said too. So I think we're in agreement on that. I think there's a consensus about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Do we adjourn?
We just quick announcement. We've got the next meeting. The next meeting is set for the 25th, correct?
25th,
April 25th at
yeah.
April
Yeah.
25th at 10 a.m.
Correct.
So
And then with this, Steve, if you could see if, or was it you, Jennifer, could see if we could have legal counsel on Zoom or something like that, maybe.
no, I'm contacting. I'm following up
Okay.
with Wally Patterson and seeing if we can engage and have Megan participate if at all.
Terrific. Great. So we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second. We got it. Thank you, Mike.